It is indeed a beautiful Monday morning here in Nigeria, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Newspaper Review on High Impact Television. I trust you had a restful and beautiful weekend, because I did. And interestingly, I would not be running the show alone today. I have someone, he's a well-known face, but he was away for a while now, and we are so delighted to have him back on the show with us this morning. Good morning, Onyepreye Kromale. Thank you for joining us on
Good morning,
review.
Sarah Osans. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again. You look really amazing.
Thank you very much.
We missed you. Glad to have you back on the review.
Thank you, and it's good to be back on the program.
Yeah, so let's talk about some stories that, made headlines for you over the weekend that we have on the front pages of the papers this morning.
I think the one that struck me the most was the Copa America, where Argentina beat Brazil 1-0. Then yesterday, the Euro 2020 finals, where the Italians actually dealt a huge blow to England. I wasn't expecting that, though.
It was really a painful one for England there, considering the fact that just last week we're celebrating their victory, waiting for them to meet Italy, and they were defeated in the penalty session last week. But let's come down to Nigeria. Now, it was a sad one for us in Nigeria yesterday, as we got report of how bandits kidnapped the Emir of Kajuru in Kaduna State, and as well as his grandchildren and some of his aides. And report has it that somewhere in Kajuru in 2018, an emir was also kidnapped and killed in that same community, local government area. It's a pretty sad situation we have there in Kaduna State.
Yes, exactly. Kajuru had become a target for bandits and kidnappers for a long time. So, the government is really fighting banditry and terrorism, but I expected it to step up its game, most especially dealing with the menace down there in Kajuru and some other communities that have become a target and hotspot for terrorists.
In fact, this has led for them to, give calls for the governor of Kaduna State in person of Nasir El-Rufai to step down, considering they have said he doesn't know how to handle the rising insecurity situation in the state, and have advocated for him to step down. Do you see any possibility of that even happening?
Well, at the moment, the power to control security operatives and to give instructions to the police, the Navy, the Air Force, the military resides at the center, which is the president. And that's one of the reasons why the governors of the states, the 36 states, have been clamoring for dissolution of power and decentralization of power, so that the governors too can have the constitutional power to be able to deploy the military to do their biddings, because that's their state and they have more knowledge about it more than the central authority. I think that will go, since the country is currently going through the constitution review stage. It should reflect on that. But one other thing is, I expect the governors, irrespective of wherever they come from, to push this through the constitution review session.
Okay, all of these are major stories we have that we'll look into on the front pages of the papers this morning. We have our guest in person of Idris Rufai joining us for the review this morning via Skype. He joins us from Lagos State, Nigeria. All right, thank you for joining us on the review this morning. Quickly, let's talk about the insecurity situation in Nigeria. Let's begin with Kaduna State. I'm sure you're aware of everything that has been going on in the state, and just recently, the Emir of Kajuru was kidnapped in Kaduna State, and there have been calls for the governor to step down, saying he cannot handle the situation in the state. What do you make of all of this first?
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning to you. The last time I was on the program, can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you.
Okay, very well. The last time I was on your program, I actually said, I made a point that the reason why the security situation in Nigeria is so, terrible now is because the bandits, the criminals, are actually operating from a point of strength. And then the government is trying to curb this problem from a point of weakness. And that's the terrible situation we have now. Now, Kaduna State is being focused now because of the utterances of the governor, because of the stance of the governor. I also made the point on that program that day that the policy of not negotiating with criminals or terrorists or bandits, whichever names we call them, is a well-known policy. And that policy was actually the policy of the unit government. But there are back channels, strategies that governments all over the world employ to free, their citizens from the captivity of this criminal. So, for a governor to insist that his policy is that he will not negotiate with terrorists, why, his citizens, those who voted for him, to protect them, the children of some of these people are in captivity. For me, it's a terrible policy. It's a terrible policy because in the first place, you are not even in charge of the security apparatus of the state, going by the constitution. It's also a terrible policy because we're talking of human beings in captivity, in terrible conditions, and then their parents languishing in agony. How could you insist, that you cannot do what you can as a governor to free your citizens? So for me, it's a callous stance. You can make that policy, you can insist on that policy if you are operating from a very strong stance. If you have all the technology, if you have all the strategies, the weapons, the manpower, the military manpower to crush these people, but unfortunately, that is not where we are. And it's so sad, witnessing what is going on in Kaduna State.
Okay, Mr. Rufai, yeah, I know you talked about, it's not a policy. I don't think the government of Kaduna State, most especially Rufai, made it a policy. He made a statement that he's not going to negotiate, neither is he going to pay. And that's, it's not far-fetched. You could remember vividly some time ago, the governor of that state has been criticized that he used to pay bandits and he used to give them money, but that has actually worked to his disadvantage. And you equally remember that as the governor is responsible for the protection of lives and property in the state, and if pupils from schools are being kidnapped and carted away, and like you said, the government is currently operating from a point of weakness. Don't you think in order to save the lives of these pupils, school children, or whoever has been kidnapped, the government will have to resort to negotiations, of course, which might boil down to paying some form of ransom to free the lives of these people?
Okay, thank you. Let me first and foremost clarify I am a policy. I was trained as a policy analyst. There is what we call policy statement. When the government comes up to make a policy statement, it's like a policy, because the next stage is to back it up with act. The policy, the governor of Kaduna State made a policy statement months ago that he would not negotiate with terrorists. And like I have said in most of my interviews, that policy is a good policy, but it's a good policy when you have the strength to back it up, when you have the strength, the power, the willpower, the political will, the military power to effect or to, move into action on that particular policy. So what he is doing is he made a policy statement months ago, and he's insisting on that. People change strategy, even on battlefield. You can retreat, look at your strategy, retrace yourself, and then go back to the war front. So that's my point. So he made that policy statement and he's been insisting on it. So on it. So as a policy analyst, as a well-trained public policy analyst, it is a policy statement that the governor of Kaduna State is carrying out. Like I said it's a good policy, but only if you have the strength to back it up. Only if you are operating from a position of, from a strong position.
All right.
So, but at this stage now, like I said, we need to retrace our strategy.
Okay.
For combating terrorism.
All right, Mr. Rufai, apologies. Let me interrupt you here. Let's move away from that and that of El-Rufai. Let's go to Delta State, not Delta State per se. Let's go to the South, the oil-producing state. The PIB bill that is going through a serious debate right now in the National Assembly, most especially in the Red Chamber, where they are calling for the passage of that bill. From what the reports we are having now on Wednesday, most likely they are going to pass that bill and it's going to become law. However, the oil-producing states are standing against that because a paltry sum of 2% or 3% rather is being given to them as from the expense, the cost for taking care of oil production in that particular region, while 30%, a larger chunk of 30% has been allocated to funding the frontier operations, which will be, looking for oil in other states or in other parts of the Federation, in places that have the likelihood to have oil resources. The South and oil-producing states have rejected this bill. However, it looks like the Red Chamber is going ahead with it. What's your take?
First and foremost, my personal opinion is that I think Nigeria is still operating in the past. Nigeria is still dwelling in the past. I indicated in one of my writings that a nation will develop, the development of the nation will be determined by the capacity of its people. It will develop the nation, the country, not by what is in the ground, but by the potential, by the capacity, by the knowledge, by the resourcefulness of human company. So to say that for anybody to believe or to feel, acknowledge that they can only develop while they develop rely on what is in the ground, I think that is tantamount to living in the past. So now let's come to your question. The 3% passed by the Senate, and I think that's the Senate version, and then the House of Representatives actually passed, I think about 5%. Now, there's what we call harmonization. I think the two parties have come together to harmonize their position now. And then, but there are a lot of ambiguity in that bill. For instance, the correct definition of a host community is not still clear. It's not clear at all. And then, for me, it seems as if it's like a strategic ambiguity. A strategic ambiguity at times, is employed by government or government players to definitely, create problems in order to, or create a divide in order to allow them to give them administrative convenience. So for me, I believe that difference, it happens, but it's something they can come together to harmonize, and move forward.
Okay.
But apart from that, I want you to know that if the harmonized version agrees that 10 or 5% to be given to the host community, whatever the decision you give to that, I want you to know that you cannot compare that amount to the amount of resources that have been given to the Niger Delta from 1999 to date. You cannot compare that to the amount of resources that is given to different state governments in the Niger Delta up to today. So, how are they managing the resources? I think we need to ask their leaders. The resources of the Niger Delta is being mismanaged by most of their leaders. So, even if they get 10% from this deal, I think that if they are going to take it to good deal, the people need to rise to demand good governance. Nobody will give it to them.
Okay. Talking about people rising to demand good governance, we know that for a while now, these people have been trying. They've been lending their voices, demanding for the federal government to look into these issues. Now, you talked about harmonization, right? How soon do you see the possibility of harmonization? Because the federal government of Nigeria just last week, I think that was Thursday or Friday, said the president, in person of Muhammadu Buhari, will sign the petroleum industry bill into law very soon. So how soon do you think these people can get this harmonization and coming together done before the president signs this into law?
How soon they are going to do that depends on them, actually, Sarah, because they are the lawmakers. I am not, a member of that house. So it actually depends on them. But know this fact. Democracy is designed for accountability, not efficiency. What that means is that the decision-making process in democracy is very long because you need to carry everybody along, and that can be very painful. And that's what I call the burden of democracy. But the beauty of democracy is that when the decision is made, you can be rest assured that everybody is carried along. And I think that is what they are doing now. But they need to walk back, and because people need to help.
Okay. Before we let you go on the review this morning, quickly let's touch on a topic that we have on the Punch that says Southwest governors propose 6 region, demand local government autonomy and resource control. Now we have that they have proposed the conversion of the present 6 political zones into federating units. They are proposing it in the constitutional review that is currently ongoing. How visible do you see this particular issue that's being raised?
I completely agree with that position. It's the way to go. We need to revert to regionalism so that every region can develop according to its state. That's the way to go. Nigeria has no business in 6 states. Most of these states are not viable. For instance, recently, the governor of Ekiti State, who is also the chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum, said that almost 90% of his tax is monthly allocation from federal government is spent on the foreign expenditure, paying salaries and all of them. So can you imagine that when over 90% or 95% of the resources is being expended on paying salaries and political appointees and all of that. So how much do you have left for capital projects where the people really benefit? So going back to regionalism, I think is the way to go. It makes a lot of sense. Most of these states are not viable, like I said, so they need to come together. So it's a very good stance. But here you say they are also calling for local government autonomy. If I did hear you clearly, that is hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy because that the state governors are the people who are making local government autonomous difficult. They are the ones who are still, taking huge amounts, from local government allegations. Costing huge amounts from local government allocation in Nigeria. So, in fact, that is the most important thing to me in this constitutional amendment. We need to make sure that our local government is autonomous. We need to make sure that they receive their funds monthly directly from the federal government. And we need to make sure that we monitor them. We demand accountability at that local level to ensure that they're actually using the resources very well. We need to make sure the local government system is autonomous in Nigeria.
Okay, now still looking at the proposal coming from the Southwest governors, it has been looked from a different perspective. Recently, the southern part of the country, the governors came together to make some form of demand. They talk about dissolution of powers to the chief executives of the several states. They talked about, of course, local government autonomy, and they also gave a deadline for completely disbanning open grazing in the region. Let's compare this with the way the North perceived this. They see this as an affront against them, mostly in regards with 2023. That's very much at the corner. What's your perception on that?
Okay, you see, I need to make this point. I think I know as a policy person, I know that policy and politics, actually go hand in hand. But at times when you need to focus completely on governance, you don't focus in high politicking. Because if you do that, if you actually erode, the genuineness of purpose in driving your policy statement. Now, what they have done by number one, they make some policy statements in their communique. like you said, complete ban on open grazing, which is good. That's a positive step. We need them to move into action. But to now delve into high politicking, into politics at that same forum, on that same topic, for me, it's part of it. You cannot, this is pure policy issue. If they had stopped at that point, it would have made a lot of sense. But saying that, okay, we want the next governor, the president of Nigeria to come from the south and all of that, it's, for me, eroding the genuineness of purpose, on some of the policy statements they made regarding effective governance and all of that. So, the decision, number one, first and foremost, the decision to determine who becomes the next president of Nigeria will reside with the Nigerian people. But because our electoral process is still not democratic enough, that is why any group, under any guise, can dictate where the president comes from. Again, that is policy. I have no problem with that. You can do your politics or your politicking for as long as you want. But you don't put that in a policy issue that are very sensitive to the life of the people. So
all right.
By taking that stance, I think they eroded the genuineness of purpose for the stance they made.
Okay.
They took on some of the policy statements they made.
Okay, Mr. Idris Rufai, a public policy analyst. It's been a good time talking with you this morning on the Newspaper Review. Many thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me on. Thank you.
Right. Many thanks to our public and policy affairs analyst in person of Idris Rufai for joining us on the review this morning. You can get updates of all of these stories and more stories when you join us at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. on News Around the Globe. Let's have a beautiful day. I am Sarah Osanta, and also stay tuned to join tea or coffee.
Priya Kurmale, many thanks for joining us.